Linda was going into her final stages of labor while still in stasis. The androids that surrounded her were unable to process how this was possible. They were very well aware, though, that if they did not intervene, the child would die, and most likely take Linda along with it. Pulling her out of stasis was not as easy as one might think, but these pods were designed in a way that each cluster shared resources and acted in unison. Bringing Linda out of stasis would mean bringing everyone else in that group out along with her. The deactivation switch was triggered, and the pod covers slowly began to ease open while the androids gathered around Linda in preparation to extract her and whisk her away to the ship's medical facilities. Slowly coming to, and burdened with the queasiness that accompanied being brought out of stasis, was Stephen Kushner, Gloria Aquino, Diana Larson, and Dominic Franklin. Finally, there was Dan Blacker, who, not suffering from any after effects, sat up immediately and began to lift himself out of the pod. It was time for him to get to the bridge and take control of the ship. The androids, perplexed at how quickly he had risen, were unable to attend to him as they were all trying to make sense of Linda's condition, for it was now confirmed that she was not pregnant at all. Dan retrieved a transport from the side of the room and began loading each of the other citizens into it, each of them still in a deep dream state and not yet fully awakened to the reality around them. Stephen thought he was traveling in a car alone with Dan, having just fled the murder at the pig farm. Gloria thought she was blind from the flash of the nuclear blast and was in an ambulance heading to a hospital. Diana was reading directions out loud from a map she believed she was holding in the tunnels beneath the asylum. And Dominic thought he was being rescued out of the jungle by Blacker and being taken to safety. The androids had attempted to speak to Blacker, however he just ignored them, and not having the ability to physically intervene due to their programming, they raised the alarm and a security detail was dispatched. Dan looked to Linda for directions to the bridge, what she thought was the exit to the asylum, and she began to convey them to him in a curt, clinical fashion as they sped off down the corridor. Linda's company had been the one contracted to construct the Soteria, and having overseen all major milestones of the project, she had intimate knowledge of its internal layout, from the main hallways to the restricted access service elevators and hidden passageways. As the transport neared its top speed, a large assault android stepped out onto the steel walkway in front of them. It raised its hand as a signal for them to halt. However, there was no way they were going to do so. Blacker shouted at Diana for instruction on a way around. However, she was oblivious to the threat and replied that he needed to just stay on the current course. With no time left to stop, the transport barreled straight into the torso of the android, severing it in two, and just as it did so, the android's rifle discharged, and the resulting projectile tore into Gloria's shoulder. This was not going to plan. Gloria, lucky to have survived, sat still in her dream state. Her eyes, which she believed to have lost, still fused wide open. Her vision, almost appearing to be locked on Blacker as a large steel beam protruding from the wall flew by and decapitated her in one swift slice. The transport spun out of control and Steve hit the brakes hard, sending them all sliding into the wall ahead, damaging the craft beyond repair. Gloria was dead. This was not going to plan at all. Diana, still believing she was in the asylum tunnels, leaned to Blacker and urged him to keep moving. If they sat still for too long, they would surely be caught. They would have to continue on foot. Blacker ordered Stephen to pick up the destroyed android's weapon. Stephen complied, still under the impression that he was alone with Blacker and that they had just had an accident on a dark country road, requiring them to abandon their vehicle. Moving off the road and into the woods, Blacker urged Steve to keep his eyes peeled and to shoot anything that moved. Blacker didn't like being this vulnerable. He didn't like this at all. They walked on for several minutes until they came across a small cottage with the lights on. "This is it," said Diana. They had made it to the bridge. The only issue now was to get access. The steel door was sealed shut. "We'll have to break a window," offered Stephen. "That door's way too heavy to kick open." "It's fine," Blacker replied. "I have a key." And with that, he lifted up Gloria's severed head to the retinal scanner and then stood back as the door slid open, allowing them access. As they began to file in, a blood-curdling halt shot down the steel hallway and made Stephen freeze in his tracks. "It's the police! They've found us!" he called out to Blacker as he opened fire on them, not landing a single shot before being torn to pieces by a barrage of gunfire. Blacker, having also been hit, picked up the weapon and placed a shot right between the eyes of the android, dropping it instantly before sliding into the bridge and securing the door with 2 extra layers of blast-proof protection. He then asked Dominic to take a seat at the controls and set a course for home. Dominic sat in the cockpit of the B-17 bomber at the US Jungle Airstrip and fired up the engines. He then pushed the craft to full revs as he took off and then made a slow bank left, turning the ship around in the direction of Earth. Blacker stared into the infinite beauty of space. In a little under a year, he would be home to rescue those he loved the most. His quiet contemplation was cut short by an ear-piercing shriek from behind. Diana had fully recovered from her stasis sickness and was once again fully conscious and panicking. "Where the hell are we?" Diana demanded to know. "How did I get here?" Blacker calmly responded. "We're on the Soteria. We're heading back to Earth." Diana stared at him in confusion. "But how? Moments ago I was with you escaping the asylum. It felt so real. What's going on?" Blacker explained. "When I was forced into stasis and hooked into the pod, I realized I was able to tap into the thoughts of everyone around me and that I could mold your nightmares. I was also able to hack into the life support system and make it appear that one of the citizens was pregnant, which ultimately forced the androids to open our group of pods." "But why?" Diana shrieked, getting more lucid with each passing minute, and slowly realizing that Blacker had sabotaged the entire population's chance at escaping the plague that had ravaged the Earth. "Do you realize what you've done?" Diana snarled. "I know exactly what I've done," Blacker sneered back. "Unlike you, I haven't abandoned my home, and billions of people along with it. You're the epitome of evil, Diana." "You know nothing about me," Diana hissed. "On the contrary," Blacker replied, "I know everything about you. Every vile deed you've ever committed. You, along with all the others on this ship, are the very worst of humanity, and you don't deserve to be the ones who survive." "Well, it looks like we're in the same boat then," gesturing at Blacker's neck. "You've been badly wounded. I doubt you'll survive the trip back." "I doubt you're right," Blacker replied. "Look a little closer." And Diana watched on in horror as she realized that his gaping wound was healing itself before her eyes. "I've got a feeling I'm going to be just fine." Diana reeled back in shock. "What? How?" "Over 150 years ago, I was captured by the Japanese in the South Pacific. For months, they conducted horrific experiments on myself and others. Hundreds were tortured, mutilated, mutated, and killed. I was rescued, but was left with the permanent side effect of being able to self-heal. When the US government eventually learned of my special abilities, I was kidnapped and locked away in an underground lab, becoming the subject of endless experiments as scientists tried to discover the secret to my affliction. When the Earth had gone completely rotten beyond repair, I was brought to the Soteria to be taken to another world and have the experiments continue." "Who are you?" Diana croaked in terror. "I'm Dan Blacker, and I'm going to save the human race." "The hell you are," came a call from behind. The pilot had regained full consciousness and had opened up the entrance to the bridge. Several large security androids stormed in and opened fire. Blacker leapt forward and began to take shots at each of them, landing a few off-center before being blown to pieces mid-air by the concentrated firepower. Blacker, torn to ribbons, then fell hundreds of meters into the piping and cables below. He was gone. "Get this ship back on course," demanded Diana, and the pilot nodded. Then they made their way back down into the bowels of the ship and back into stasis. And there they slept, peacefully, undisturbed for several more months, awaiting a new life on a pure new world. Until the day came when the pods began to open and the citizens began to wake. And then the ear-piercing alarms began to sound, and the pod bay doors opened, and they were all sucked out into the icy void of space to their deaths. And Dan Blacker smiled as he turned the ship around and set a course for planet Earth.